That's the superpower. It doesn't matter what we experience or what our mind thinks about or where it goes. It's the fact of noticing and coming back to the anchor, noticing and coming back. And that's it. That's it.
Now, I'm an American, so I want to know, what do I need to buy? Do I need a mat? I need a special mat, probably.
Well,
some kind of a pillow. I'm imagining like a pillow thing that I need to like sit cross-legged on or something.
These are the times we will all remember. Were you there? What did you do? So what do you say? We need to clean this place up?
Thy kingdom come.
Think celestial, making the celestial kingdom your eternal goal.
Listen to me now. Listen to me now.
And he is not permitted to evaluate
innuendo, half-truths, and lies.
Go to some weak-sauce, liberal, Democrat, baby-butchering church, but do not come back to this one ever again until you repent.
Doubt is a tool of the devil designed to weaken us.
Repent! Repent! Repent!
You are listening to The New Heretics. Shame on you.
Maybe just to introduce you, Patrick. Last episode, we're joined by a former evangelical to discuss the philosophical, to make a philosophical defense of Mormonism, doing a good faith steel manning of that worldview. So we thought we'd have on someone who isn't a Buddhist today to steel man Buddhism and mindfulness with us. Since that's what we do on this pod, apparently. I don't think you don't call yourself a Buddhist, right?
No.
Yeah.
I like some of the philosophy, but I've never really got into the whole, anything that's kind of metaphysical feels a little, I don't connect with. For
a little wooey?
Yeah, like it could be, maybe it is, maybe it's not, I don't know. But it's more like, I have a friend who is more of a Buddhist than I, like he ascribes, he lives very consistently that way, but even he says he doesn't feel like he can kind of identify as a Buddhist. I dig. I think that's kind of my experience has been like, I guess I feel the Buddhist stuff is like how to deal with the hard stuff of life, especially the stuff you can't change. And more than any other, I mean, there's other stuff, Stoicism, but that's probably the Buddhist stuff is I've personally found most helpful than any other kind of religion or philosophy.
Yeah. So we're having you on today because you and I were friends in college, and something that, I think we sort of bonded over in college, kind of in a weird way, because I was still a witness at the time, but you were a former evangelical at that point. And I feel like there was some kind of I don't know, like there was something about the way that you engaged with topics about religion and stuff that I found very thought-provoking, but also you didn't make my walls go up, which I don't know if you did that intentionally or not. If you did, I appreciate that. Because I think some of the things that you questioned me about my beliefs in college were things that I had to mull over for years afterward. But yeah, maybe just a little bit about your background with Christianity. Was there anything, I know you have various feelings about that, and you have a family history there and stuff to discuss. But yeah, I'm just kind of curious.
Overview, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, Nick, you're an easy guy to talk to, and you can make hard conversations accessible. So I think that's a lot to do. You created, I think, I remember a safe place to like talk about touchy kind of third rail type of stuff. So yeah, those were, and for me, I didn't
kind of the more third rail, the more I want to talk about it.
Yeah, I know. I can relate. Yeah, I think we connect on that too. Yeah, it's like taboo. Then it seems like that should be a discussion. And I think I didn't know much about Jehovah Witnesses before I met you. Actually, I didn't know anybody. Had no idea about what that was. So it was actually really interesting to me too, just to understand what is the approach and perspective and philosophy. And it also reminded me of how, even though I wasn't at the time identified as an evangelical, there were still like these, call it worldview or assumptions maybe that I didn't even realize I still had that were kind of rooted in that evangelical philosophy. So I kind of think of how I grew up as fundamentalist Christian. I think there's a joke my dad, I remember, used to share when we moved to Colorado in like 81, where he would go around telling people he was a fundamentalist, and people said, you can't use that word anymore. You have to call yourself an evangelical. He's like, I'm not, I'm a fundamentalist. He's like, oh, you can't say that's a bad rap. You got to say evangelical now. He's like, but I'm not. My dad did not vote for Reagan because he was too liberal. So that's also kind of a joke in the family. That's the genre.
Rabid lefty. Yeah.
Yeah. We came out of. I was in kind of a political, I call it like fundamentalist white evangelicalism, if you will, kind of Midwest. It was very political, very, very political, very, I think, Nick, in college, I even explored that from a historical perspective. Why did like white evangelicals and Republican Party, how did that even come to be? Because that's not necessarily an intuitive thing. But
a lot of people our age, I don't think, understand that this was a fairly new and fairly like intentional merger between the evangelical movement and the conservative party. A lot of it had to do with a reaction to what was seen as like an atheist, a communist trend that was developing in the world. Things like "In God We Trust" was not the U.S.'s motto officially until like 1948 or something like that, I think. And prior to that, it was "E Pluribus Unum" from the many one, right? So this was like a very deliberate like effort by certain evangelical leaders and things to marry their interests to a political cause, and then abortion also exacerbated that with the Roe v. Wade decision in the 70s. I should let you talk about this. You're the history guy, actually. But
James Dobson was pro-choice at first. He wasn't like really super bothered by it, and then he was more so. And then
just for anybody that doesn't know, James Dobson's the head of Focus on the Family. Maybe the largest Christian publisher in the country or something like that.
Yeah, they were when I was involved. Yeah, and they're still huge from what I hear.
And also headquartered in our hometown where we were in college together. Yep. So
yeah. And so I speaking of there's this. My dad worked at a Christian nonprofit, which was kind of the idea was it was a Christian publisher, but also a prep course. They had 2-week summer courses to prep high school women and men to basically prepare for the liberal and communist indoctrination they would experience in college. And so it was kind of framed as like an intellectual, almost like a Christian intellectual endeavor. Read philosophy, read, secular and all the Bible, and really argue against the secular professors and universities from an intellectual perspective. And so kind of in my zeitgeist or my like self-definition, it was like Christianity is a intellectual philosophy. There wasn't like friends who were more on the like speaking in tongues or that kind of, that was not my upbringing. That seemed kind of woo-woo to me. I was like kind of freaked out by that. It was very much grounded like this intellectualism or pseudo-intellectualism. And And so I just kind of thought like, yes, but when you
did your dad have all of William Lane Craig's books all just like lined up on a shelf?
I know who that is.
Oh, okay. He's a pretty popular Christian apologist right now online. He's an older guy though, so I think he's been doing this for some decades.
So like when you talk about like communism, like the big evil group, as I was kind of raised, was Karl Marx. Karl Marx was the worst. Like everything was like Marxist, like Marxism was going to be, it kind of came out of the 50s, this is kind of Midwest 50s, afraid of communism. Right. And evolution, just the concept of evolution was like completely threatening. That was a huge deal. So anything that was evolution was bad. If it was secular science, it was bad. If it was anything close to Marxism or communism, that was just terrible. And, and it was like you just stayed away from any of that. But there's also like this big push to engage in education. Like I studied this a little bit with you back in the day in college and grad school about how, even though there's this friction with academia, there's also a kind of a desire by a lot of evangelicals to be acknowledged or
legitimize their beliefs.
Get a PhD, right? I know so many PhDs from, my area growing up, because there's like this, legitimization that was also like a frustration, but also a kind of desire to be accepted as well. And to get into universities, get jobs in universities. And then I went to a Christian school too. So I think I actually didn't really know a non-Christian until I was 18. Or 19, because I moved to the summer camp, Christian summer camp as a kid, lived there, worked there, moved back to Colorado Springs and went to Christian school from preschool through 12th. So I was like, I was all in, and I wasn't even, and I was a true believer. Like there was no, like I was all in. It was like, I think one of the things I miss is the certitude. Like it was really nice to feel like I was right. And I had the secret sauce and everybody else was wrong who disagreed with me. And it was like, kind of like, it could feel like better. Like it felt really good to feel better than people, to be honest. And just,
you feel, conspiracy theorists have this same kind of sense that like they have uncovered the secret truth that no one else has. And cults also have this same issue. Fundamentalist religious groups, same thing, right? It's this, I am part of the elect, special, privileged few who know the truth to everything. And then that gives you an answer to everything. You have a reason, an explanation for literally everything that happens, because you can always twist something to fit into your worldview.
Yep, exactly. And it felt, and I think it was probably, I was starting to kind of have the intellectualism that I thought I had was starting to break down under scrutiny, right? Because that took me a while to unpack. I feel like I'm intellectual and logical, but then like I'm making this jump to this like next level metaphysical stuff. And for me, it really, it's part of the reason I studied history when I came back to school in my mid-20s, was like I was actually to study Christianity from a historical perspective, not a theological perspective. And that's when it started to break down. I was like, well, these things I was raised to be true were actually not ahistorical. Like that didn't happen that way. This group of people became Christians because a bishop decided that he wanted this version of Christianity. He used that as a way to like monopolize political control in a certain area. And it became like clearly a tool. It wasn't like some belief. It was a way to, you see all these moments in history, and it just, the what I was raised as true, didn't hold. There was clearly evidence to the contrary. And so I remember I went through a state being like, I was kind of feeling betrayed in a way, like, wait a second, that's true, this happened, but that actually didn't happen. And it's well documented. This isn't even like a leap, this didn't happen. And for me, when that like kind of veneer of like the people I trusted told me these things, especially historically, and they weren't true, it just kind of, I remember it led me to be like, I need to keep pulling on this thread because something isn't right here.
Yeah, something interesting there, I think you've identified that we've talked about before, is that there was something key to your faith that cracked, which it sounds like in your case was that you believed that your faith was built on a pillar of reason.
Yeah.
Or on historical accuracy, or I don't know, something like that, logic.
Yeah.
And once you started having that pillar undermined, that's where the doubts really started being something you had to like confront.
Yeah.
Right.
That's exactly right. And yeah, that was exactly right. And I remember at this one point, I think a seminal point was when I remember it was coming back to college and having like a Christian class on history of Christianity. And it was just like it was so factual. And I was like, this is so interesting. It's all evidence-based and it's not adding up to at all what I understood to be how things were. But also after that, I remember having this like distinct feeling that I don't know if I am a Christian anymore, but like all of my, and I mean, we could go on the whole digression of Christian, right? To me, Christian meant white evangelical Christianity, not JW, not Mormon, but my Mormon friends, all right, they're Christian, right? The whole like politics of the term Christian is kind of, I always find fascinating, like who gets that word. But because if someone were saying,
we have a 2-part podcast on what is a Christian, by the way, if anyone.
Okay. Turns out I wasn't it. but yeah, so I was like, I went through this thing. I didn't tell anybody. I was like, I don't know that I can like make a decision on if I'm a Christian anymore, because like my entire community, my friends were like, my family was a Christian. So I was like, I think I need to like tell everyone I'm not a Christian and like kind of like break my community. And then I can like kind of reflect on what I actually believe. I just felt like I actually couldn't objectively even know what I believed because I had like all these, like my community was dependent upon me being a Christian and I needed, it's like I had to break that for me to figure out what I wanted to believe. So I told my dad, I was living in college, living at home, told my dad, I'm not a Christian. And bless his heart, he was so sweet and I think it was hurtful to hear, but he also was supportive. It's like, I disagree, but I love you no matter what. And he was really just a great dad in that moment. And, but I told everyone, all my friends around who were Christian friends, I'm no longer a Christian. And it felt like this kind of like, it was like I was coming out of the closet but I wasn't actually gay in this weird way. But I wanted to know how people would treat me if I was. I mean, that analogy I know breaks.
I mean, on Twitter, all these guys are calling everyone who's not Christian gay. But yeah, I know.
Yeah. So for me, once I did that, and it was like, oh, I really actually don't believe this. I miss some of my friends and my family that are sad, but I actually don't like it just kind of all came apart. It's like what for me, and I started thinking about like people have had emotional, like these Jesus kind of experiences, or like I felt the Holy Spirit or whatever that kind of metaphysical thing is. And I realized I always wanted to hear God's voice, but I never did. And then I started breaking it down. I was like, oh man, but how do I know if that's God's voice or like, my mental health really taking a turn for the worse? Like, would I even know that? And anyway, I just didn't have any of those existential kind of experiences. And thinking about it, like growing up, the people who did, I actually mistrusted. I was like, I was a kid. I was like, oh, you just want attention, or, I don't actually believe you're hearing Jesus' voice or whatever. And some of the people I respected, I still think I know a lot of Christians who are very sincere and pious and consistent and thoughtful and reflective, but I just found myself not connecting. Like I have to, at some point, like I just have to say, yes, I believe all this stuff and I can't question it anymore. And that piece really, or I can only question it within like a context of like, am I pre-trib or post-trib? Have a healthy debate about that. But you can't like broaden it out to like, at some point it's like you go further. And I remember being afraid of that invisible line. I can't go beyond some level of questioning. And once I could, it was like this huge weight off my shoulders. Like, oh, I can ask anything and wonder about anything. And it was
you had a coming to leaving Jesus moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually right. Yeah.
Reverse epiphany.
A friend of mine later that went to school with me and I saw at a wedding, a few of us there had gone to the same, grew up together a similar way. And he called it it was his deconversion experience. We started just kind of organically talking about our deconversion experience. And that kind of sums it up for me. It's like, yeah, I did kind of have a deconversion experience. And for some others, I've had some friends who it's more really gradual, really slow. I mean, mine was kind of slow too, but I also have people I've known who I think would have had a deconversion experience, except that they're married and have kids. And, it's like the stakes that's really high. And I kind of understand not wanting to go there because they're not able to go there because of the consequences.
Yeah, it's hard to overstate the power that the social bonds have on people to keep them in.
And in one sense, I kind of felt like I was kind of a nerdy. I didn't have a lot of friends growing up in the community. And I felt in a way that made it easier for me because I wasn't like, I had some other friends that were like so popular and did so well. Like I also was very awkward in a way. I never really liked talking about my testimony or whatever. And I never liked telling others about Jesus. And some people I had friends who were just so good at it. And they had tons of friends and I didn't. So in a way, I always thought it was like a little easier than me I had less to lose in some ways than I really did have less to lose than most people I knew. And I think that kind of counterintuitively cracked the door for me to be like, what if I just really think what I think and believe what I believe? There's even though I did lie about not being a Christian, it wasn't to as many people as others I knew who had, girlfriends and boyfriends and, their job was at a church or something, it's like, now you're not just talking about kind of a personal feeling. You're talking about losing your wife or losing your job or, it's like the stakes are, so it kind of like makes sense that you don't go there either in a way. But for me, man, I just felt like my mental health just was like something opened up where it's like, I don't have to worry about what I think about anymore or what I question or what I could be like, I don't know, or I'm wondering about this, or how does Marxism work? Or what are libertarians? Or, like whatever the thing may be. And it was like, not like, am I going to get yelled at or booted from my church or my community for being too lack of faith or something. And the one thing too, that really, this has kind of got me extension more towards atheism. And I wouldn't say I identify as an atheist necessarily now, but I remember started thinking, doing this. I did 2 exercises. One was I kept having this idea of like a Buddhist monk, some place in India or somewhere in Southeast Asia, who's just like this monk who raises sheep or something his whole life. He's a decent guy. He just raises sheep and tends for sheep and meditates and keeps himself. And one day he like falls off a cliff and dies. In my how I was raised, he was going to burn in hell. And I was always told like, well, if you have enough faith, God will reveal himself to you. The truth will reveal itself to you, which in my raising was the Trinity as well. And I started studying. I was like, well, if that was the case, then you'd have little pockets of evangelical Christianity of popping up throughout the world historically, because people do want to know the truth sincerely. And so they would have these expressions of this happening, and you didn't. It was like religion was largely geographically homogeneous. Northern Europe is more Protestant, more Protestant. Now I forget. Was it more Protestant? Yeah, where other Luther was, and then kind of more Catholic, and it was more traditionally Catholic, and Middle East is more Muslim, and America is more Christian generally. Like you have these generalities of really dominant beliefs throughout the Hinduism in India, Buddhism in Southeast Asia, and right. So it was like,
it's something like you can predict with like 80% accuracy what somebody's religion is by where they were born.
It's like, so I was like, I didn't actually come up with what I didn't come to some personal decision. If I was raised in Mecca, I'd be Muslim. I just occurred to me, like, would I really have like come to Christianity if I was born a Muslim and lived in like Saudi Arabia in a very traditional Muslim family? I would be Muslim. If I'm honest with myself, I can't. That's what. So it's like, so that all led me like, so this Buddhist guy must be burning in hell. This nice old Buddhist monk who did nothing but like be nice to sheep is burning in hell. And I just started to extend that, where it's like, well, if God is that arbitrary, who says like even this planet has a right version of Christianity? Like maybe like this planet Earth is basically that Buddhist monk, and the truth is in some other galaxy far, far away, and we just don't even have access to it. And so this whole planet's going to burn in hell because the truth is over there in a different part of the universe. And if that's the case, then we're all fucked anyway. So and that's possible. Like there's parties like that is possible, but there was just no way out of that in my mind. So it's like, it just felt if it can be arbitrary, it can be arbitrary at my exclusion is kind of where I landed.
Yeah, I think the same thing wakes up a lot of witnesses too, or maybe not wakes them up, but it's one of the key like doubts that a lot of witnesses wrestle with even when they're in, is this idea of like this. I mean, if you're a witness, there's like 9 million of you on a globe of what are we at? Like 7.5 billion?
Yeah.
Incredibly small fraction of people that have the truth from your perspective. And the theology until very recently was that basically all non-baptized witnesses would die at Armageddon, right? So with basically no exceptions.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's something, it gets very difficult if you actually spend serious time thinking about this problem and you don't just sort of enjoy the idea of like, I don't know, this wicked world that's like harmed you or something coming to an end, but you actually think about what that means. Yeah. It gits very hard to hold that position, and to the point that I almost don't know a witness that holds that position. Even though it is sort of like, they just recently have softened it a bit where they've said it's possible that God could allow, basically we can't, say who God will allow in and won't allow in or something to that effect, with like a dogmatic certainty, but they still basically hold that you need to be, in touch with the truth in order to survive, because that's their justification for the preaching work. Yeah. They would argue that what's the point of a preaching work if God's just going to sort of select people based on some kind of heart condition or because, whatever, because he's choosing them for some kind of internal reason. Why have this preaching work? Why go through this like religious exercise of trying to devote your life to serving him and all of these kinds of things? So yeah, really the entire religion is kind of propped up on the idea. And I think this is true for a lot of evangelical strains too. It's really propped up on this idea that like, no, you have to be part of our group or your eternal salvation is, in serious jeopardy.
Makes me think of, I guess like how I like started like getting into the Buddhist stuff a little bit was, I was having some health stuff going on and I started doing yoga and, that kind of got into some meditation, and it was kind of like, I kind of dug that, the thing about, just trying to be kind of nice to your body and mind and be disciplined, but also, it just seemed more, less dogmatic, I guess, in a way. And, but I also, anyways, the meditation part really got me kind of looking at other stuff. And that's kind of how I got into Buddhism. Like, oh, that's kind of the OG of meditation in a way. And my brother passed away, my younger brother. And that was like a moment, like, I was like, I don't know, I just gotta, how do I deal with like what felt like really hard, overwhelming stuff in like a healthy way? Like, I don't want to start doing heroin either. And that's not cool. And, but like, I also was like, never been like, I don't want to be the guy who like goes back to something because I have whatever. Someone, it's like drink too much, so you go back and become a fundamentalist Catholic or something. It's like, yeah, cool, but it's just like the same. It's like, okay, you just whatever. You're just always going hard on. I was like, something that can be actually healthy that isn't like a reaction to just stuff I'm going through. That's actually healthy, and that started. I had a therapist who recommended like this person, Tara Brach, who's a psychologist, but had some books that were really cool on how to deal with hard stuff. And Pema Chodron, When Things Fall Apart, is one of my all-time favorites, and read a ton of Pema.
That was a book you recommended to me when I came up to hang out with you after I first woke up.
What did you think of it?
I loved it. It was it was exactly what I needed at the time. I was having a lot of death anxiety, and really feeling like, a real sense of hopelessness and dread that I had never felt in my life before. Did you go through something similar to that when you at times after you left?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think with my started having some health issues, which Nick, about with some stuff, that was like, I thought I was dying for years. and I just was like, no, this is really uncomfortable. I'm like, I wish I was dying. And that was Pema to me. It was like, and I think that's just like generally like the Buddhist stuff resonated. It was like, it was the one thing. It was like, okay, how do you doesn't require you to feel healthy or feel good or have bring anything health wise to the table. Like, I just kind of started feeling like you got to be like this athletic dude or something, or, to like be a good Christian or be a good atheist even. It's like, what if when your body is breaking down or it doesn't feel like it's working right and you feel like a piece of shit? Like, what do you do with that? And I was like, okay, if there isn't a Christianity, like, does that mean I just die? Like, I really I like the idea of heaven. And I remember we talked about that in college too. And I think is it David Hume? I was back in college. I remember this helped me. He had he was dying, and his friend, who was like this Catholic priest, his best friend, and he was like, aren't you afraid to die? And David Hume was an atheist. He's like, would you like to convert now at your deathbed? And David Hume said, no, I wasn't bothered before I was born. I don't think I'll be bothered after I'm dead about being dead. And it even though like that didn't totally resonate, like the idea that someone had the courage to face death, eyes wide open, without it being like a negative thing, was really cool to me. And this concept too, and more Buddhist-y stuff, is like the idea like you're a raindrop that individually, and when you die, you're like basically landing in the ocean and you're like returning home in a way. And this is kind of from Thich Nhat Hanh and some others who have articulated this nice, like, there is like a way that death can be without heaven that can also not be this terrifying thing. And I just wanted to learn more about that. Like, how do you face what feels like death with dignity, and I guess how to be happy to the extent I can with what health I have. How do you be happy? I don't want to be all, and just Buddhist, the Buddhists like Tara Brach, Thich Nhat Hanh, Pema Chodron, Jack Kornfield, like these kind of, I would say they're like, not so much Thich Nhat Hanh, but those others are like Western, PhD psychologists, neuroscience, John Kabat-Zinn, Goldstein, but also like honor like this ancient tradition, yet also aren't threatened by science, and actually say science should actually inform and even change as we know more as humans, we should have that affect our philosophy. it was like this living thing, basically, which I really liked. Yeah, of course, if we learn more, that should change how we think about stuff. So it was kind of what I was exposed to, kind of like a secular kind of Buddhist way to, how do you deal with life that's hard, especially things you can't change, and still find happiness. And it just was the only thing that kind of connected with me, that I didn't have to be physically, like, that's like idea of meditation. I was like, I feel like I can't do shit. So that's what meditation is, just sitting around. So that sounds like something I can do.
I think I could sit around.
Yeah.
Not think about anything.
I feel like I can do nothing. And that feels like accessible in a way. So yeah, and also this sense of kind of kindness or compassion, that like, you're not a bad person for not being healthy or feeling healthy. Like the disentangling, like, my body is not my total identity. So as I get older and weaker and sicker, that doesn't mean that I have to like be weaker and sicker as like how I identify. That was kind of blew my mind. I was like, oh shit, like, wow, that is pretty. Yeah. So like, if I was totally healthy, I would never have gone there. I have no doubt. I'd probably be at the bar right now. Like, it was just like desperation. I felt like I just like, God, there has to be a better way to live than this like ongoing despair and fear of what's coming next. And the thing I came from isn't doing it. That's not a better path either. It's like, I feel like I walked out of a cave and I can't walk back in now that I know it's a cave. Like, I know what that is, and it's fine, but it's not more real than. It's
not going to work for you once.
It's not going to work anymore. Yeah, I can't unring that bell in a way. Even if I wanted to, I just can't. So yeah, it just kind of like, oh, here's a way to like how to deal with things that are really hard, and in a way, and still find some peace and happiness. And also, I kind of dug that. It's like, it's not easy either. It's also honest that like, it's hard, and it's, the point isn't hard. It's kind of like, if you can make it easy, make it easy. But when you can't make it easy, okay, how do we deal with that? And that often requires, sitting with really hard stuff. And I've been to 3 retreats, silent meditation retreats, and my God, I had a hot mess in every single one of them. Different, totally different. But like, yeah, it was like, and I also like that it's not like, kind of the Judeo-Christian thing, like, here's the truth, this is the truth. It's kind of like the thing that it's like, I think it was something I read once or about Buddha supposedly said, it's like, basically, if this is working for you, great. But if this doesn't connect with you, don't do it. Like, don't do it if this doesn't feel right. Like, only do it if it's helpful, is kind of the underlying thing. Like, that's sweet. Like, it's not like saying it's the only path. It's just saying, here's a path that has helped some people. And if it helps you, great. But if it doesn't, do your own thing, man. Like, it's not like, it's not like, I don't know, with all the proselytizing of Christianity, I think I appeal to something that's like, not trying to convert me, or doesn't really care.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that a lot of people, like, especially for our listeners who are former Jehovah's Witnesses or former Mormons or have been in cults, where, really down to like literally the TV shows that you're allowed to watch and things are prescripted to you, are prescribed to you. I felt like that you're actually kind of a perfect person to talk to about Buddhism and mindfulness, other than like a yogi or something, because I think you're showing how you don't have to be like all in on like an entire worldview that's going to define every belief that you have from now on moving forward, and is going to dictate every decision that you make about everything in your life, right? Like, you can take something like some ideas from Buddhism. You can read a book like When Things Fall Apart, like we were talking about, get some stuff from it that's really useful to you. One of the things, the main thing I got from her book was just to not try to find ways of distracting yourself from how you're actually feeling, even when it's negative, right? Like, and that was something that I think it probably some combination of me as a person, how I was raised, and also being a witness. I think there was this idea that, like, if you're having negative emotions, there's something wrong and you need to do something about that in order to correct that, right? So if you're having doubts, you need to start like reading your Bible more. You need to like get out in service and start preaching more or whatever. Or if you're having anxiety or whatever, you need to be thinking about the new world, right? You're always looking for this like release of this pain or this anxiety or whatever. When in reality, this is just a part of being human. We have these feelings. They're as natural as breathing. And there's something really like you were talking before about this kind of release at different points when you just felt like free to just like think about, different kinds of ideas that you had been closed off to before. For me, there was something liberating about saying, I feel anxiety in my gut and I'm just going to feel it.
Yep.
Just going to allow myself to feel it. I'm not going to try to shrink it away or come up with some, way that maybe I can still live forever, with, a head transplant or something. Just feel it. Just feel that anxiety, feel that it's real. Yep. And you realize that these are just feelings. It's okay. It's okay to feel that way and then let it go away.
Yep. That totally resonated with me too, because like if it was a non-positive or non-happy feeling, it was like a problem to be fixed. Mm-hmm. Like I'm sad. I need to fix that. I have anxiety to fix that. There's something wrong with me. Like the there's another like anecdote in Buddhism about the two arrows, where the first arrow is like the pain that is unavoidable of just living, The second arrow is the self-inflicted. So like first arrow might be the anxiety. The second arrow is like, I'm a bad person for feeling the anxiety, or I have to fix the anxiety. The first arrow is like unavoidable. That happens in life. The second arrow we can work with. Like, oh, I can like you said, like feel anxiety and it's uncomfortable, but at least for me, it just gets way worse when I'm fighting it. And then like self-loathing, like I'm a terrible person for why can I fix this? Why do I have to, and it's like, oh, it's okay. Like that was, I did this, once I got kind of into some of this, I did a 2-year, mindfulness meditation, teacher program, with Jack Kornfield and Tara Brock and others. And that
you are a yogi then. Never mind.
Well, it felt like 2 years of great therapy, actually.
Yeah.
Because
is yogi Hindu? Am I mixing my religions up? Yeah, I think I am. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I apologize to anyone I offended there.
Yeah, that's right. But there's so much overlap. Like there's like this, like there's a lot of commonality as far as like the like embracing. You're not like I think for me in that 2-year program, one of the things that really resonated was whatever I'm feeling, it's like just kind of go with it and honor it. Be like, yeah, maybe I don't like it, especially like you're in a meditation where that's where a lot of stuff comes up because there is nothing to distract yourself with, right? So you're sitting there, it's like if it's fear or whatever that is, the feeling is, it's like, oh, I don't have to fix it. I'd be like, just honor it. Be like, at a retreat, one of the teachers told me once, that Buddhism is more interested in what you're experiencing and less in why. And I was always like, focus on why this. And that's not a bad question, of course, but it's hard to get an answer to that. But I'm like, oh, I can know my chest feels tight. My heart is spinning up and that's uncomfortable and I don't like it. But when I'm like, oh, that's bad and I must fix it right now, and I'm a bad person for feeling that, then it just is like, it's like piling it on yourself. And so the concept of self-compassion blew my mind. Like you can be kind to yourself in those moments. You can you can actually be like, kind of like go easy on yourself. It like was not like I at the last practicum for you had to do teach a couple, some meditation classes. And I did a day retreat on self-compassion, and I spent a few weeks to prepare for it. And even though I've been working with this for several years, the act of trying to write a curriculum for a meditation retreat on self-compassion meditation was so triggering. I almost couldn't get through it. Like I was having like full on breakdowns. Like I had to take some time off work because I just it was a realization of how hard it was for me to be nice to myself. And over time I realized, oh my God, I'm not the only one in this predicament. It's like what I kind of felt was a threat sometimes by people started to change of like, oh no, they're experiencing like a very similar thing. They're kicking their own ass, or they're, hurting bad and don't know what to do about it. And also it's like, oh shit, man, we're like in the same boat. Thich Nhat Hanh had this thing, actually, if I had a life philosophy now, it's probably this. Thich Nhat Hanh said, in life, we're really just walking each other home.
Yeah, and there's so much stuff in life too that it just sucks. And it's just going to suck. It just sucks. And there's nothing that anybody can do about it. I think probably the most profound experience I've had with something like this was a friend of mine committed suicide a number of years ago, but he was a close childhood friend. And I remember at the funeral, I had a moment where I was crying a lot, kind of toward the end. And I just sort of, noticed people around me that, people were dabbing their eyes with tissues and things at this funeral. And I just had this, I don't know why I thought this, but like, I just had this kind of fleeting thought for a second as I felt like tears rolling down my face that I'm not wiping these tears away. I'm just I remember literally saying to myself, I'm going to let it bleed. Wow. And there was something so cathartic about that, just actually feeling the tears streaming down my face and literally falling all over my suit jacket, and it just felt like the most natural human moment maybe I've ever had in my life, the most authentically just real moment. Mm-hmm. And it helped me, I think, grieve and recover, to be honest. I think we have this tendency to want to try to bottle these negative emotions all the time. This might be more of a Western culture thing. I'm not totally sure about that. But I know, at least in my case, in my experience, that's kind of my natural go-to is I need to try to find a way to divert my attention from this thing that hurts, or find something good to feel. Which often, can lead to just hedonistic stuff, or, you're just doing mindless pleasure seeking. That's not really going to take the pain away. But if you just let yourself feel the pain, it becomes almost more manageable that way. And more, I don't know exactly how to put it. It's almost like unwinding a knot or something by just by just putting your attention on it.
Nick, I don't remember the moment, but what you said about crying, I had an experience where just letting it go and just, I I think it was actually, it may have been actually the first retreat I went to, I hadn't told anybody about my health stuff, and I had so much shame about it. I was just like, I couldn't, like, I hid it from family, friends, everyone. And I went to this retreat, and it was a silent retreat, but at one point they like ask, do you have any questions in a group? It's like the one time, and or any questions about, you share about your experience. This has never happened ever in my life, but I was like, well, I'm just going to say what I'm experiencing, and this was one with Kornfield, and I totally blacked out. All I know is I said all the things, and then and I was just came back. I don't know, like 30 seconds. I don't know, and I'm just like full on like tears, and I'm just like said the thing I was most afraid to say out loud about, that I had this, chronic health thing, and I just felt like a piece of shit because of it, basically. I don't know exactly what I said. I know I said things. I remember like Kornfield just looked like really lovingly and caringly. And anyway, we got up afterwards, and I was like, kind of like, you're not supposed to make eye contact in a silent meditation retreat. And I forgot. I was like a eye contact whore. I was just like, because I felt like I didn't die. I actually thought I was going to die if I like let it all overcome me and just like experience this like deep sadness and embarrassment that I had and shame. And then I didn't. And people are actually nice. And someone wrote me a note, and I still keep this note, about a very sweet note from that. But something about just like letting it all happen and not trying to push it away or fix it or make it okay. And then I didn't die. It's just like, I know it's almost cliche because you hear about this, but like that was my experience. Like I just like said these most personal thing, and I'm just crying, and nothing happened. I just felt like, it's like, I don't know, it's like my truth. My truth is not pretty. And I was embarrassed by that. And then it was not only okay, I just felt like this, like I embodied my experience for the first time. I was like honest with myself and honest with those around me, like kind of for the first time. This is really, really hard, and I'm really, really struggling, and I don't see a way out. This is just how it is. And I don't know, by the act of just experiencing it full on, it just felt so good. Like it was hard, but it was like empowering is the word that comes to mind. I was kind of skipping around. Like I didn't die of embarrassment is what I kept thinking. I was like, oh, you don't die from embarrassment. But I didn't realize at that moment, like that's what I thought was going to happen. Like I just this deep, what's that saying about the biggest thing you can to fight shame is to say it out loud or something, like, that's how I felt. And it was so it was like totally honest. I think that's the best thing. I think it was totally honest. And I was so afraid that my honesty was like bad, but then it was like, it was so freeing just to be honest with the struggle I was having.
I have a quick, maybe kind of tangent, but question really that I want to ask you, Patrick. And it's, you mentioned these spaces where you got to be able to be a little bit more like open, break down some of those barriers that you had, in terms of like being honest with people, right? And kind of being honest with yourself. Because I know, coming from a Christian background as well, or a lot of listeners here will be coming from a Christian background, it's hard to let go of some of those, you could say, presumptions or maybe even presuppositions regarding like how we ought to feel in regards to the shame, right? Usually shame in the West is something that's very, it weighs its burden on individuals. And so how did you, in a more practical way, how did you find the resources or the means to go to these, these places? How did you start that research? Like why Buddhism, or why these retreats, why these meditation camps? And then a follow-up to that would just be, you could say, how did you find the, because a lot of these spaces are very useful for people. That's kind of why we started this podcast, because it's maybe not that in a formal sense, right? We're not trying to be a replacement for therapy or anything like that, but maybe it's like a gateway, right? So I guess my follow-up question is, what advice would you give someone in a similar journey, right? Where they're like deer in headlights, they're not really sure what they ought to be doing or what to look for. What kind of advice would you give someone like that?
I mean, so when I was going through my, I went, before I forget, one thing you just said that I think is worth mentioning is, in all of the experiences I've had with Buddhist teachers in that space is, sometimes meditation isn't healthy for you. And I was there was a point when it was not cool. I was so in a tight spot. Sitting with it was not actually healthy looking back. It was, distracting was what I needed at that moment. It was too much to sit still. And I've been in some retreats where some people were feel like they knuckle down and they should do it. And I felt that, knuckle down and do it. And then that becomes like, you're not really trying to accomplish anything really in these things. So don't do it if it doesn't feel, it's like they would be the first to say, hey, this is not, like you said, a replacement for therapy. For me, because, I was having this health issue with my stomach, and then my brother had passed away, and I was like, how do I deal with that too? And I started seeing therapists, and I had a friend who was a therapist, and they started kind of just recommending some books, and which one's Pema Chodron, When Things Fall Apart. Another was Tara Brach and Jack Kornfield. And in college, I had heard an audiobook back when they had audiobooks of Jack Kornfield. And I don't remember what he said, but his voice was so calming. I just remember thinking, I don't know what juju he's on, but the guy sounds so chill. I want that chill. And I kind of dropped it, but I just always remember man, something about that energy was really nice. It sounded like the guy had found some peace in his life that I wanted to find. And so when I started reading those books, I didn't realize they were like therapists. And I started reading more they have this connection with Buddhism, and they weren't selling it. It was kind of in the background. This is what informs partly what I'm doing, but it was I guess for me, it just it felt practically beneficial. Okay, I'm really struggling with this feeling, like what you were saying earlier, Nick, what do I do in that moment? And I just hadn't been exposed to anything else that was practically, how do I, when I can't fix or change what I want to change, what do you do? And I'm sure there's other, I think there's other traditions or out there that have other ways that are helpful. But for me, that was the only thing that was connecting. I can't, Western medicine, I had gone down this thing of so I was in this executive leadership program, and it had two things that, looking back, were not probably helpful, or at least how I reacted weren't helpful. Well, first, this one was helpful. They said they had this exercise. So this is COO, CFO type crowd. And they had this exercise. Write down the emotions you experience. What are your emotions? And there's four of us guys, COO, CFOs. And we're happy, sad, angry. I think I had three. I think that was me. And someone else had four. I was like, sweet dude, you had 4 emotions. And anyway, and so the CFO,
greedy.
Yeah, the CFO who was doing this exercise, he was okay, show, what are your lists? And we're all, we had it's a big piece of paper, and we're all in 3 in the corner or whatever. And I just remember looking at her face, she had this appalled look. I remember thinking, I bet there's more than 4 emotions out there. And she turned this like card over, and there's like huge card, and there's like hundreds. All of us are like, "Did you know this?" No, man, I didn't know this. You know,
empathy. What is that?
Executive leadership? And like, nobody had any idea. You'd be like beyond like happy, sad, and angry, and you know, and it was just, and it's like I remember I felt like I knew enough to know that like that probably wasn't reality, but I didn't know. I just didn't know there was more. Well, the other thing that happened is this speaker who's like, whatever you want to fix in your life, just go for it. You can fix it. And I like took that to mean my thing. I was like, hell yeah, I'm going to fix it. So I did all the things, man. I hired a biologist. I did all these tests. I went to the Mayo Clinic. I did every crazy experimental stuff on me. Like, cause I was like, I can fix this. And I finally did.
Did you do Amazon ayahuasca?
I did not. I did not.
So you did not try everything.
Yeah, no. There may be a few things that I popped out. But I was like, so I finally hit a wall. I was like, oh, if I've done everything, now what? Like that was beckoning on. I could fix it, and then that's kind of when the therapy kicked it. Started doing more therapy, and then some of these books, more just like how do you think? Tara Brach's book was it was on like a compassion. What does that mean? How do you foster that? Anyway, they just connected with me of like, oh, these are practical things to do that are resonating with me. And then I learned later, there's actually like a philosophy behind that is like that Buddhist piece. And that resonated with me. I think the piece I would say, if there's someone out there, like just think back to myself, like also like when I went to my last retreat a couple of years ago, I remember the main teacher there, he says, generally there's like very beginner Buddhists and beginner Buddhists. That's like the two kinds. And I always like, I feel like there's a sense of humility of like, there's, it's everyone's on the journey, and I'm not there yet. There's this is not like coming from I have all the answers or whatever. It's we're all in this journey together. But I think the thing that was probably one of the things that was hardest for me was a belief. I didn't know at the time, it didn't feel like a belief. It was just what it was true, right? It just is that I was alone and nobody could help me or relate with me. And this deep, deep sense of isolation. And that was really scary because that kind of despair. And I was like, nobody can relate with this thing and looking back, if someone was, feeling a really hard moment in their life, I would say, no, feelings are real, but not always true. Like, of course, that's a natural thing to feel in a hard moment, but it's not true. There is another way. Even if the thing can't be fixed, there's still a better way. There's still a way to find happiness and contentment and peace. There's a way out. It may not be what we're thinking of or what we're aware of, but there is another way. And I just remember that being such a powerful feeling of I'm so alone. And I think that was a misunderstanding that was like that second arrow that kind of layered on that suffering that pain I was experiencing, not the pain, but the isolation, the loneliness, nobody, this is what's the point? This is just unbearable, and then it's like, oh no, it actually is true. There is a way. There's another way, that is happy and better. And, it doesn't mean the hard stuff isn't there, but there's a better way to still find purpose and meaning and, love, if you will. And I think that I felt like that path to start to unravel that was like the Buddhist philosophy, like, oh, you can it's like love, it's like or compassion. You don't have to, we know by neuroscience that by creating intentions, of trying to foster some of these benevolent, healthy emotions, you can like actually create neural pathways just by the intention. And over time, they've measured in neuroscience that, yeah, someone who's like has no access to compassion actually does have access just by creating the intention to do it. And that gave me hope. It's like, oh, we can actually rewire our brain literally, and they're measuring that. That's like a thing. So I think for me, I had to acknowledge that as hard, when things were hard, they also, I don't know what I don't know. And just because I feel like I'm in a tight spot doesn't mean I'm always going to be in a tight spot. Even if like the thing is a chronic health thing, that doesn't mean there isn't another way to relate with it or, manage it or, and I just was so sure that there was nothing else to do. That was the really dark part. And I remember, and just whatever it was that, so when Kornfield, Brock, those books, and I really connected with them, they're helping me. And I just started like, oh, they're kind of Buddhisty. So I started going online and be like, well, what's a retreat? What's a silent retreat? What's a meditation retreat? And they scared the shit out of me. I was like, you're just like sitting, like you're literally doing nothing. And you don't no drinking, no meat. You don't talk even. You don't even make eye contact. And it's, depending on the kind you go to, it can be kind of austere. It's like,
especially even as an evangelical, you weren't into the woo-woo stuff. You said earlier. Well, so like this probably seemed kind of wooey.
Yeah, it totally seemed, and it just like seemed like the worst idea. And then and also you pay for this? Like, sounds like prison, not like something you choose to do. And honestly, all I had access to at that point was like, I feel like I'm going to be a tough dude if I go through one. That was like it. Can I just make it through one? That kind of like, I think I'm
Buddhist boot camp.
Yeah, I think I'm going to hate it. It's going to suck. I'm going to be terrible at it. Like I had all these self-talk things, but then it was like, yeah, sweet. And it was hard, but it was like, it was actually really cool. There's like really cool things that like, you don't know until you're silent for like a few days. And, but I feel like when I've talked with people and like you guys and other people, there's like, it could be like this Buddhisty stuff, but sometimes I have friends like they just kind of figure some of this out on their own, or it's a different philosophy. Or I actually think I'm not so down on Christianity these days. We're like, hey man, if this is like your path and it works for you, and there was something about if you're being a jerk to others, that's not, if you're harming others, if your philosophy creates you to hurt others. Yeah, I don't consider that like ultimately a great thing, but I took me a long time because I was like, there's no place for religion for a while, but I kind of also know some people who they seem to do it the way I would want to do it if I was able to still be a believer. They have like a level of humility. They're not like saying other people are going to go to hell if you don't do your thing. Yeah, they're very pious and sincere and caring about others. And even if I don't always agree with the specifics, it's like, I think that person is kind of a better person. They've tapped into something that feels healthy to me, seeing how they live their life. I see my dad and some of my family who actually like, oh, you're kind of doing it the way that if I could go back, I would. That's how I would. I admire how you do that. Like the Pope. I am not a Catholic, never want to be Catholic, but I've always had like respect the Pope, this current Pope. He just seems like a very sincere guy who is from what I can tell, just really pious and humble. And so I think that's also my mind is there's just so there, this could manifest. Sometimes it's nature. People connect with nature, and that's like their way to, relate. Sweet. That's, I guess that's kind of on my mind is, in fact, I remember at the end of the first retreat is like, there was like a comment Kornfield made about, Buddhism is really just if you haven't figured out a better way. I've heard that in a couple of retreats. Like if you got your thing and it's working for you, sweet.
Yeah.
It's not like,
if you need a little bit of shorthand though, here you go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was like, yeah, that's kind of cool.
I think that's right though. Like if you're getting closer to truth, I don't know that it matters how you got there, right? Like if there is something extremely helpful about meditation, let's say. I don't know if it matters whether you stumble onto that because you read a Buddhist book or because you're at a friend's funeral and you just have a thought and something hits you and then it works for you or whatever. Like the truth is out there regardless of what gives you access to it, I think.
Yeah. And it makes me, you ever feel like you're in a presence of someone and you may not even know the person. It could be like at a concert or whatever. And it's like, man, I get some vibe that the person is like, something cool is going on over there. Like, that can happen.
Well, there's even a joke about how a lot of religious people are just people who have never been to a concert or like they don't understand that like
that was me.
Really great concerts just give you like a spiritual experience. It totally does, right? Yeah.
That was my actually first concert, because I was so into Christian stuff, because I didn't know, a friend of mine who was more worldly is like, want to go to The Cure?
Yeah.
I was like, I've never heard of them. Okay. So I go to The Cure in Denver. I could see myself, because I went to Christian school. I was wearing a white polo shirt. So I could see myself on the Jumbotron in a sea of black. And there's this little white guy with a white polo shirt. Like nobody, I had no idea. It's like,
you're probably the only person in there without eye makeup.
Like, is there like a dress code to these concerts?
But there is. I mean, there is for sure a spiritual, what I would describe as a spiritual. I don't know what else to call it other than
I was
a spiritual experience
like,
to a concert you're really into.
I've experienced that like on retreats, what I would describe as a spiritual experience. There's been a couple, like I saw Thich Nhat Hanh in person once years ago before he passed, and I didn't even know who he was. It was with a girl I was dating, and I was like, I don't know who this like Buddhist guy is, but like there was just like some energy. I was like, oh, something is happening here that's like I just couldn't put words to, but was really beyond like something I could explain. I guess that's how I think of spirit, like something that's a connection that is inexplicable, but it's there, like something was there. And I guess I also like, just when we're talking about religion in general, like when I said it, like, I don't necessarily consider myself an atheist, like I kind of feel like if I had to guess, that's kind of where things fall. But because I've had these other experiences and other people have too, I just always feel like I need to leave room for like, I don't know, I don't know. I mean, I ultimately really don't know. So this could be just like humankind is so young in the context of the cosmological time frame that, maybe our brain just can't quite process this larger truth or something, or I don't know. But I feel like for me, I need to leave room for, what I don't know too. Like all the mystery of things is, I don't know.
I'm at a point where I really prefer not knowing everything.
Yeah, right. It makes me think something about Einstein.
I don't miss having the answer to everything. I kind of like that I don't.
Yeah, I think Einstein said something about like sometimes if you don't wake up every day just in awe of the mystery of the universe, you're kind of missing the underlying beauty of things. Like, yeah, it is kind of like it's magical. Like that's kind of like a sense of like I don't know. I really don't know. That's a good point, Nick. It really is like when you think you know everything, that takes if there's no mystery, there's no like fog or mist, like out here in the Pacific Northwest, I always find the mist like kind of magical, mysterious. Like that's really appealing. Just like, I don't know what's beyond there, maybe Sasquatch is real and, we just don't, there's a hell of a lot of trees out here in the Pacific Northwest. Who knows what's out there? I find that, I feel that really appealing. Just that level of, I don't know what I don't know. It's okay.
It's missed all the way down.
That's right. That's right. So, logo. You say you were raised a Christian? Was that your background?
Yeah, I was also raised Jehovah's Witness.
Okay, Witness too. How old? You am I asking? Like, did you have like a deconversion experience, or was it more gradual, or what?
Yeah, no, I similarly, like Nick, I grew up witness, and then um, I went to college and I had a deconversion slash deconstruction. Um, yeah, I mean, it was just kind of one of those things where it was a transitionary period in my life, right? You leave the house, you go to college, all of your beliefs are attacked. This is a tale as old as parents paying for your tuition type thing.
All those Marxists that your parents were prepping you to fight against.
Yeah, all the neo-Marxists, what is it called? Postmodern neo-Marxists that your Jordan Peterson and your parents warned you about. Yeah. So the whole shebang, I thought I was going to be going into college headstrong and, be able to really solidify my faith. And then, you find out, no, it's none of that. And it's quite the opposite. You tackle, or at least you think you tackle a lot of your beliefs. I've kind of come around to the other side of that, and I'm like, I don't think we really overcome what we believe in some sense. I think that in some ways maybe you change certain aspects, or maybe you gain a new perspective about what you believe. But if you were to ask me, like, do you really change what you believe? Probably not. It just takes a new form. But deconstructed and all of that jazz. The only, in quotes, spiritual experience that I've had wasn't even, because this is funny, I always mention psychedelics, and I'm curious, Patrick, if you've had any psychedelic experiences. But I did have a spiritual experience that was like psychedelics, but it wasn't on psychedelics. But it was, let me just caveat this. I don't like spiritual experiences. I don't even like the framework, or when people say, I've had a spiritual experience, therefore Jesus Christ, or therefore Hinduism, or whatever. I just, not my cup of tea. Not that that's bad. I think power to you. If that solidifies your faith, I'm more than happy to root for you, but it's just not, it's not true to me. But I did have an experience that was very profound, I guess. And the only thing I can liken it to is a similar experience that I had been on psychedelics. And so the fact that I wasn't on psychedelics, but it was very similar, to me, it still impacts me to this day.
I get your point on the spiritual. I wrestle with that too a little bit, because I kind of mistrust that as soon as someone goes there. And there seems to be like a jump to like, I have this inexplicable experience to, this means Jesus is real or whatever. On the psychedelics, it's interesting you brought that up. So I haven't done psychedelics, but I want to.
Patrick, I am going to be at your house.
Right. Well,
in 1 month from now.
I'm terrified of it though. That's the thing. Like, so many benefits.
I haven't done it yet either, really.
Yeah,
I tried it, but it didn't really do anything.
I went through this period. I mean, with Nick, when you mentioned anxiety, like I was having panic attacks. At one point when I was really struggling, I was having like rolling panic attacks, man. I was just like, it was awful. And I just was like, I'm afraid of a psychedelic. I'm going to have like this, my brain is going to break. And I've seen some accounts where people have said actually really terrible experiences, but like afterwards they have this amazing insight. And it's like, this was the hardest thing I ever did, but I'm so glad I did, because I had this amazing epiphany or insight about something.
Dude, Logo saw the platonic forms. I want that.
Yeah.
let me know what that is, and I want that.
Yeah.
let me speak to that a little bit, because the thing that I tell people is like, oh yeah, like I'm like, this is gonna sound stupid, but the closest thing I can liken it to is like seeing the platonic forms, and it's just like, you can see some crazy stuff, but the practical point that I really liked about psychedelics is that it's almost like incredibly introspective meditation speedrun, or like speedrunning, like the introspection that you get from like meditation. And the reason why I say that is because one of the trips, I'll speak about one of my experiences. One of the trips, I found out that my dad had a tumor in his brain, and I went into the trip, like I had gotten a call about it right before I went into the trip. So there was nothing I could do to isolate myself from being told that news. And there's nothing I could do. I went into it and it's just like, okay, well, I just have to go into this knowing this knowledge, or like having this. And so the whole trip I kept tackling with the fact that, one, there was, I was thinking like, should I drop out? Should I do this? What can I do to help my family in this time? And at the end of the trip, I came to the realization that I can't do nothing, that I couldn't do anything. There was absolutely nothing that I could do. And it wasn't even like, oh, I got to be stoic, or I have to be the strong one for my family, because even that, I was like, that was almost like phony in some sense. And in every single trip that I've had, I wouldn't say that I've had a profound experience, but it allows you to kind of bypass a lot of this like noise that we have from day to day, and maybe access some of the maybe deeper thoughts that we can maybe have, or the introspection that we can have. And so I like in some not that everybody has this experience, and not that I'm advocating for the use of psychedelics. I just want to caution that psychedelics can be like an, in quotes, like a speed run through some of that introspection.
That jives with some of the friends I've had that have tried psychedelics and had, really positive experiences. Like, yeah, that's exactly why I want to experience it. I'm terrified. But it's kind of like, it's kind of almost feel like the meditation retreat. There's probably, I just want to do it just to one time, even just to like experience it and have almost like the courage to like, yeah, I'm just going to let it almost like let go and just let the experience be what it is.
Just anecdotally, and again, this is not an endorsement of this, but I've heard from a lot of former cult members that psychedelics was huge for them in their like deconstruction process.
I've heard them from Christian friends too.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know why. Again, I haven't done them either, really. So I tried once and it just didn't really do anything. I think I just had a microdose, but so I don't know, exactly how to explain that or why that would be the case. But I've had like not just a couple people tell me that it was an extremely profound experience, and that it really just helped them to overcome a lot of the mental baggage that they were carrying.
Yeah, that resonates. And yeah, I
There also are a bunch of mindfulness people that are into psychedelics. I know Sam Harris is a big proponent of both meditation and psychedelics.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. And it's, I think they'd say the same thing. It's not for everybody, and, you do have a guide and be safe. But yeah, I know it's very big in that community.
It's actually been legalized in Colorado now. And you can do microdosing under the supervision of a therapist. And there's actual legal clinics where this is done at and stuff. So this isn't totally.
No, my
fringe.
My therapist was a psychologist, but also stayed at the Naropa Institute, and she was doing some psychedelic thing with it was Boulder, one of the universities in Colorado, measuring the benefits when done under the right conditions and in the right situation. So I feel like that's not even super controversial. Obviously, be smart and have to. It's not a casual thing, but it's it just scares me, and the kind of the fact that it scares me makes me want to do it too. It's like.
By Matsuo Basho. First winter rain. I plod on. Traveler, my name.
one thing about, I think that those in the religious communities, like, from what I've gathered from witnesses talking with you, Nick, I feel like that's true. And I have a lot of Mormon, I've had several Mormon good friends over the years, dated a Mormon girl one time, and even evangelicals to a lesser extent, is having a built-in sense of community. I feel like that's a fail for those of us outside of organized religion, especially kind of the atheists, or, it's like, this has just really been on my heart for the last kind of year or so. Is like, man, there's I remember with my this Mormon girl, she was like, every night she had another thing going on, and there was just like this built-in community. And yeah, it's prescribed or forced or whatever, but all my friends that I've been in that are Mormons, from what I can tell, have really benefited from having this really tight community. And I feel like those of us who are in a organized religion, I don't feel like we've, in a way, that's what the mindfulness meditation retreat, I mean, not just retreats, but like even groups up here, that's like, I think some of us go to that just to kind of try to have community in a healthy way. But it's not, at least I haven't experienced it in the way I had in a religious context, where you just had this group of people, you get together, you try to do healthy stuff together, talking about healthy stuff, or, how to work through life, things that are hard. I don't think that's been taken out of the non-religious context in a healthy way for those of us who aren't religious. I haven't really seen that modeled to as well as I think that's a loss. I guess what I'm saying, I've always felt that loss, and I've never really seen a atheist, agnostic, whatever, non-religious group be able to replicate that as well as some of these other groups. Particularly Mormons is the one I'm thinking of. They just got community all the time, And
well, it's because Mormons have the truth. You can listen to our last episode where we
explain some of that. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Shout out to all our new Mormon followers.
Yeah, it's a good point that you bring up in terms of that. You could say that loss of community, and even some of those secular substitutes, like those third places, like they're just vanishing.
I mean, stuff like the bowling league, I heard come up the other day.
Right.
Just stuff like that. The stuff that people used to do that built community.
Yeah. Elks Lodge or whatever those things used to be. I don't know anyone that does those things anymore.
It's like only a minority can afford country clubs now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, that's true. If you're rich, you can get some community pretty. You can buy your community.
So something that I've kind of been dabbling with was because I mean the beauty about religion is that you not only do you get the community, but you get like a worldview, right?
Yeah.
So it's a one and all stop shop. So I've been attending an Orthodox Christian, Eastern Orthodox Christian parish. And I mean, I really enjoy it. I like going. I like talking to the people, and there's a sense of community in the ritual, just the ritual itself. And am I sold on the religious aspect? I think that's a pillar of faith, right? I think that's the whole. I think anyone earnest in a religious or a spiritual path has to ask themselves, do I believe this? And I think the question should always be suspended ambiguously as to whether or not you really do. That's my read on that. And so, although I don't think I would consider myself a, in quotes, Christian, I think just embodying that, just going to the parish every Sunday and just living that out, I think helps me.
I'm glad you said that, because I like when I travel, I always look for like old Catholic churches. Because when I go into like an old cathedral, I always feel like the sense of, I guess it feels like spiritual, some sort of connection with something beyond the day to day. And I totally like architecture, like the old architecture, like that's in the liturgy. Like something about, the repetition. And even in yoga, they got into this thing doing some chanting, which I hate. I don't sing. But I kind of got into that a little bit because there was like the repetition, it's the sound, there's just something there that is cathartic. And yeah, I mean, I've thought about like, hey, maybe I'll go to a cool church and just hang out, and because it's like people, and I totally get the appeal. I find that appealing. I don't think I can go back to the evangelical strip mall church.
Nobody should go there.
You missed the boat on the whole church stuff, evangelical Christianity. But yeah, the old liturgy traditions, I find that very appealing myself. And for me anyway, I guess at this point in my life, to me anyway, I don't care about it wouldn't be about somehow ascribing to more than just being there, and it's comforting or it's connected to be around other people who are showing some level of piety or some level of, just by showing up, there is something there. I want to ask you guys a question. This is maybe a little controversial, but hey, seems like this is the right forum to do it. I kind of got in this thing a few years ago. I was like, well, partly, so going back to yoga, there was a lot of guys who were instrumental in yoga who found out to be like sex offenders, basically. You see this in a lot of religions. And I started kind of getting into there's a bunch of cool documentaries out there like NXIVM and, all these others. And it seemed like there's a theme, which is interesting, where there's usually a guy and he ends up like sleeping with everybody and embezzling the money, and but also saying it's like not about the sex, but that just sort of is God's will for everyone to sleep with the founder somehow.
Good to be the cult leader.
Good to be the cult leader, yeah. Right? Yeah. So I kind of have this thing. I'm kind of semi-joking, but semi-not on this idea of community, where it's like like on the NXIVM, there's like a filmmaker that's who got sucked in. And that's why they have so much footage, because he's like documenting it when he was in it. And he's like, nobody ever thinks they're in a cult, right? No one joins a cult being a cult. It's the community, right? There's like this community and this connection. And a lot of times it's healthy, right? There's like no drinking, maybe no drugs, it's healthy, or you're working out and you're trying to better yourself. And there's this, everyone's kind of trying to do this self-actualization thing together.
There has to be some benefits, right? Otherwise people wouldn't join it. I mean, exactly. You get something from,
Exactly. And then it eventually goes off the rail. So I keep wondering can you have a cult without the bad stuff? And if it's like weird, we can call it cult with a K with an E at the end. So it's like, we'll just, call it something else. But like, could you do that? Could you
you totally can.
Yeah. Like, could you
it's Dungeons and Dragons groups. Magic, if you prefer.
Where's Aaron? Yeah. I mean, but kind of seriously, like, yeah. Yeah. Like, because I feel like that's logo, like what you're touching on there is like the benefits of having some of this like community piece here. And it's almost like you don't need to go in the deep end necessarily. You can go as far as it feels, I guess, authentic or real to you. And if there's benefits and you're not hurting somebody and someone's not getting hurt and you're experiencing community, it's like sweet,
Yeah, there's a parallel here between something that Nick's brought up before, which is a quote by Vonnegut, which is like, Nick, you probably know, it's like, be careful what you pretend to be.
Yeah. Be careful what you pretend to be, because you are what you pretend to be.
Yeah.
And we're sort of always pretending.
Yeah.
But you become, these. Yeah. It's very similar to the idea of like the fake it till you make it sort of mantra, that we're all kind of doing that all the time. So be careful what you're faking.
What you're putting out. Yeah.
And then that line of thought, and then I forget who it's. I want to say it's Pascal. Famous for Pascal's wager. He's like, I think he said something like, you don't go to church because you believe. You go to church because you go to church to make yourself believe, or you pray to make yourself believe. And I think that those two things went in tandem with a genuine, or what I would call in quotes, a genuine religious tradition. What I mean by that, I don't mean like oh, you have to return to the one true faith, the one true tradition. Like, you don't have to go to a monastery, a Buddhist monastery or an Orthodox Christian monastery to get an authentic experience. But what I mean is that if you go to these places and you go and embody that perspective long enough, there comes a point where you might reach a threshold where you might start believing it. And some people could say, well, like, that's just like a psychological phenomenon. You don't actually believe what they're saying. But I'm not so sure that that's the case. I think that if you embody something long enough, you do cross a threshold where you go from, like the mimetic, so just purely pretending, into embodied belief. And I think as long, like, something that I really like that you said is, like, as long as that's your path, because I think the seeking out the spiritual path, I think it's authentic to each individual insofar as they're honest with what they're looking for. And so if you're honest to that, if you're authentic in that sense, then I don't really see a problem with someone becoming like in quotes, like actually choosing to hold the moniker of being a Buddhist or being a Christian or being XYZ.
I totally agree. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I totally agree. And if it's that your path and it's authentic, and go for it. I think, like, maybe one of the, as you're talking, maybe one of the hard things about, like, speaking for me, like, when you're born into a religion, you don't have a choice. You're just like, this is it. And, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have chosen Christianity evangelicalism, if I had, like, been given a choice. But the fact I wasn't given a choice is, like, as I got older, that was like, whoa, this isn't, it's like I lost agency or something. I didn't ever feel like I had agency to engage in it in a way. It's almost like, even if it was real, maybe I still would have left, because I just, like, didn't have a choice. It was, like, just prescribed to you. I feel like that sense of agency is such a big thing, because it's like not the thing itself, but having the ability to be like, have you ever do something where it's like, this is a really hard thing. Like, one person's, like, really hard thing is another person's, like, passion or labor of love. To me, it's like, that's agency. It's like, oh, I am choosing, this is going to be hard, but I'm doing it because I get it and I connect with it at some level. And, the work isn't the point. The point is why I'm doing it. And that connects with me in some level. And someone else, like, oh, that's the worst thing in the world, ever. And it's having the choice and being able to be like, yeah, this is what I want to do. And I feel like I connect with this. I like that. But also, like what you're saying too, Nick, I just about that, like, whatever, some way we're always sort of performing, or I feel like that's true too. That's, like, part of being social beings, is we're like, we want to make sure we don't do the thing where the village takes us out back and kills us because we pissed off the shaman accidentally. It's like we're trying to make sure we don't go too far one way or the other and get
right. Well, and it's not like belief is like a light switch that gets flipped on or off, really. I mean, in the context of, like, writing, I'm a writer. At what point? So I just called myself a writer. I don't publish writing really yet. Hopefully one day. I went to school for English and for writing. I've done a lot of writing in my life. I have done professional writing, but they'll tell you when you're studying, like, fiction writing, or you're trying to break into, like, screenwriting or things like that, to develop the habits of a writer, and think of yourself as a writer even when you're not a writer. Because it's almost like gaslighting yourself in a sense, but you sort of need to just get your mind in that frame of, like, here's what other successful writers do. So I'm just going to do that for a while. And you try that, and you write every day, or you set up a routine of writing. You try to observe the world in a way that a writer might. You pick up tips from people. And at some point you sort of just become a writer. It's not really like this. Yeah, like, you can draw a line in the sand and say, that was the day I became a writer.
Is that along the lines of, like, you are what you do, or, like, I mean, it's like it's almost what you're saying about, like, what you produce.
Yeah.
Like, we are be careful, what we're pretending to be or whatever, because we do, if we're like, oh, I'm really a good guy, but I just act like an asshole because that's what I need to do to survive. It's like, well, are you an asshole now? If that's how you're behaving every day, it's like, if you lean into something and you do it long enough, it makes sense. That like becomes true and real.
Yeah, there's an interesting concept from storytelling that I actually think is kind of a profound idea, just generally, that I've thought about recently, which is that basically what a character is in a story, because this is really something you have to really grapple with when you're writing good fiction. If you're trying to write good fiction, is okay, I need to come up with a character. Well, what is a character? I mean, these are not real people, right? How do you convey to an audience quickly what a character is and who this person is and make them seem believable? And what screenwriting experts will tell you is that characters are the actions that they take, basically. So it's not some like inner sense of who they are or something like that. I mean, you might need to give some thought to like a person's background, their past, like the traumas that have affected them, whatever things they're trying to overcome, what their goals are, whatever. But ultimately what the audience is going to see and what they're going to like understand the character to be is the actions they take. So if you set up a character, for example, who's, let's say, a devout Christian, maybe you show him at church, and then in the next scene, he's robbing a bank, like the action of robbing the bank is going to tell you that this is not our standard Catholic here or something like that, right? And that's going to be what, and it's as you start piling up these actions that we get complex characters. And I think there's a lot of truth to that in life too. I think a lot of us think that we are, we have this like internal sense of self, maybe it's an internal sense of identity, but it maybe not to us, but to the outside world, we, in a lot of ways, are our actions.
Yeah. I love that.
I have a quick question about, maybe to backtrack a little bit in terms of that question about agency. Because something that I've been thinking about is in terms of like, the life that you live, and in terms of like, it's like, at least in the West, a lot of people ask themselves the question of like, what could I have done, or what would have been the outcome if I would have done this, or like, why didn't I, for example, this is a super prominent question. I wish I would have woken up earlier in terms of their deconstruction or deconversion story, especially in a high control group like, Jehovah's Witnesses, or in some cases, Mormonism. They ask themselves like, I wish, or they hope, I wish I could have woken up earlier, or I wish I would have done this, and then maybe I wouldn't have been a Jehovah's Witness or a Mormon. So I wanted to ask you the question about agency, Patrick, because it's something that I've been thinking about. It's like, well, this is your life, right? Like let's take assumptions about the afterlife aside, whatever that looks like for anyone. This is the one life you get. And so even if you could go back, like, would you? Because like, wouldn't you be a different person? Like the person that you are now, reflecting upon even this question, that person would be gone, like obliterated. They'd be dead in some sense. And so what do you think about that question of agency, or if you would be able to go back, would you do things differently?
Yeah, I've thought of this in terms of my my GI stomach stuff piece that's just been such a big affected. I mean, I was even on the track of applying for a PhD program when this happened, and wanting to be a professor, and that was like the track, and then that just kind of who would I be, or what would I wish that, and I think, like, to me, the uncomfortable truth is most of the parts I like most about myself have come through the difficult experiences of this thing that I wish was not true. But I really like what level of, like, if I talk about like compassion earlier, what level of like empathy or compassion I have, it was not there before. Like, it came through this experience of myself and feeling totally broken, and what do I do with that? And if I can be broken, well, I kind of joke, but I'm like, yeah, I'd be at the bar right now, or I'd be at a club, or, I'd gladly be a finance bro. It's like such a different life, and I don't really have any confidence that I would have found some of these maybe healthier traits without sort of, being crushed by life. And so it's like, I don't want to go through that. And I wish I hadn't gone through these things, but I don't know that I would also choose a different path either. It's like you said, it's like a different person. It's like, imagine if I was Brad Pitt or something. I was like, yeah, I think that might be kind of cool, but I don't even know, because that's that would have been such a turn. I don't even know what that, because we have our genetics, we have the beliefs we were raised in. And I think you made a point earlier about there's some piece that's always there. We're not tabula rasa. Like, that's always going to inform us, but also our experiences are so powerful that if you have a totally different set of experiences, I think you're going to be a different person. And so and also, being kind of grounded in science, as I understand it, I try not to, or I don't find it healthy for me to spend too much energy on regret or the path not taken because it wasn't taken. And, a counterfactual is so hard. It feels like, for me, it can go down this like, oh, what boy, I'd be this, that guy. But it's also really hard to imagine because it's like so different. I guess to answer your question, I really want it. I wish I didn't go through some hard stuff, as I think most of us don't want to go through hard stuff. But I'm also feel appreciative for some of the learnings I've gotten from those hard things too. And I just don't think I would have necessarily had that if those hard things weren't there. So no, I don't think and it's funny you asked that. A few years ago, I would have said, if I'd murder somebody to go in a different path, like literally I would do that. Like, would I have hurt somebody if that would have given me an off ramp here? I would have I don't know, I could say no to that. That's how desperately I wanted to have a different reality. I was like, I don't know that I could put a limit on what I would do for a different option. But I haven't thought about that until you brought up. I wouldn't say that now. It's in a weird way. I'm like, I'm kind of, in one sense, I'm kind of lucky that I've gone through what I've gone through, which feels weird, but I actually feel that way. So yeah, no, I don't think I would.
Yeah. So we've talked kind of more generally about kind of how Buddhism has and mindfulness has been a benefit to you and the kind of pieces of it you've taken. But I'd like to get a little more specific for people that find some of these ideas attractive or would like to explore some of this. Can you just define what mindfulness is?
That's a great question, Nick. And probably you talk to 10 people who practice mindfulness and you'll get 10 different answers in a way.
Sure.
Yeah.
Same with Christians.
But to me, very essentially, it's having the intention to be kind with your current experience. So we were talking earlier, I'm feeling some anxiety. It's like, oh, I don't want to feel anxiety, but I am. So how can I be, kind to that? Take a breath, sit down, just kind of like, this is happening. It's happening. Basically, it's already here. So how do you deal with something that's already here? A little, and even if we don't have the ability to be kind, it's like, God damn it, I'm freaking struggling again, or I'm, and it's like, oh, I want to be kind, but I can't, damn it. Just having the intention itself, as we know, builds over time. And it's like, I would like to be kind to my experience. I don't like it. And I would like to be kind to myself. And I don't have that access, but just having that, just trying, actually, scientifically, we know makes a difference over time. So having the intention to try to be kind with your current experience. Now that like leads to other things. How do you do that? And that's where like sitting meditation happens, like taking a few minutes every day or whenever you can, and just like, okay, I'm just going to sit quietly for a few moments, notice my breath, notice what comes up, fear, boredom, like I'm going to die of boredom. And, okay, be with dying of boredom. Let yourself die of boredom. What happens, kind of a sense of curiosity underlying a lot of these. It's just without trying, again, with the intention of not being judgmentally, but just curiosity. What's happening? What am I feeling? What is like when I feel anxiety? Does my mind judge that? Does it accept it? Just even noticing what stories happen with our experiences. Am I rationalizing something? To me, it's important because of my background in Christianity to consciously take things out of a context of right and wrong. That's my go-to. Like my immediate reaction is this right or wrong? Is this good or bad? So like noticing that, like, oh,
most of our listeners are going to relate to that too, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. This is like noticing, I'm like saying this is, they're in between discomfort and bad and feeling good and good, right? I can feel good doing heroin, but that may not be healthy for me, right? And I may hurt if I'm, it may be hard if I'm sitting in meditation for 3 minutes, maybe the hardest thing I've ever done. Doesn't mean it's bad, right? So it's like, trying to disentangle what's uncomfortable and what's pleasurable with what's good and what's bad, and just noticing my own judgment of myself and be like, oh, judgment, and labeling it. I'm judging. I'm judging my judging.
So you are thinking. It's not like an emptying of thought.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. In fact, yeah, this is a great question. Most of our mind, in the Buddhist context, the mind is like, you notice we don't really have a lot of control over it. We sit down and we think, I'm going to have this very serene meditation, and it's like, dirty sex fantasy comes up. Right. Then it's like, did I make a mistake on my taxes last year? Like you just don't, you're not trying, and your mind just goes. They use the analogy of like a puppy dog, which resonates with me. Is like, it's like mine is like a puppy dog. It's just kind of wandering this way and that way with no real. And just like a puppy dog, when it pees in the kitchen, you're not going to like beat the crap out of it. You gently nudge it out the door to go pee in the right place. And over time, eventually, the puppy dog starts to learn where to go. And so part of the practice of mindfulness is training the mind. This is where those who don't care at all about anything I'm talking about, compassion or self, whatever, just the discipline of learning to direct your mind into a certain direction is beneficial in navigating the world. And I have people who that's all they care about is just trying to train the mind to go where I want it to go. Now, that it's a lifelong practice. I think Pema Chodron, I read somewhere once, like she said, you should try meditation and give it a little bit before you say it's not working. And by like a little bit, I mean a decade. The Buddhists have like this saying about like, I don't know what I think about transmigration of the soul, but there's an idea of like, you're doing this for lifetimes upon lifetimes, where like, if there's an analogy of like a big, huge brick of stone, and there's a story of a bird drives by and drops a little cloth on the corner of it. And basically imagine how long that takes to wear down that stone is how many lifetimes we have to practice meditation. Like the cosmological time scales, like give yourself a break, basically, is how I like, we don't got to figure it out in like one sit or, this is a practice, but just noticing, like when you sit down, that's usually what I'd say. I almost want to say every single person notices is how busy the mind is. And that's not bad. That's just how our mind works. And so what you were noticing is like a lot of times the most common direction is to use the breath as an anchor. You can use anything. It could be noticing your feet on the ground. But as you sit down, I'm going to sit down for a minute and quietly bring my attention to my breath and notice
So
that
you anchor with something. You
anchor something like a breath or a feeling, like noticing my hips on the ground, and then notice when your mind wanders. It's like, okay, I'm noticing my breath. Oh, my taxes. If I make myself, having a thought, and then bring it back to the breath. And then in another second or 10 seconds or when very quick, it's like, oh, I just having a sexual fantasy. Oh, sex fantasy, bring back to the breath. And that's really the practice, is noticing. Just the act of noticing when our mind wanders is actually really, really powerful. Not that so that it's not, and this is where the trap that we can fall in very common is like, oh, I'm bad, I'm thinking. No. Just the act of noticing that my mind's gone somewhere besides the anchor is like, that's huge. To know that I've just drifted off is kind of a superpower, in my opinion, in its own right. I drifted off, bring it back. And gently, like the puppy dog, gently bring it back. Nothing bad happened. This is the work. This is the practice, is bringing the mind back to the anchor. And really, that's what you're doing in a very simple sense, is bringing the mind back to the breath, maybe labeling it thought, back to the breath, thought, back to the breath. Or maybe fear. Sometimes it's not thought. It's like tension in the chest, fear, back to the breath. And I'm feeling anxiety. In a retreat, it's like boredom for me, like boredom, but then that goes to anxiety. Like I remember my first week retreat, like 3 hours in, I'm like sitting there and 40 minutes in, I'm like, I've got something like 700 hours and 37 seconds left of doing nothing. I started to panic. It's a panic, and then you just come back to the breath, and that's the art. And over time, you usually start to notice that you have more time on the anchor before the mind starts to wander, and over time, it's longer. And the beauty of being able to focus. I mean, Nick, I feel like you and I have talked about this before too. It just that's a gift in its own right, but it's not.
I mean, as somebody with ADHD, I'm especially well aware of the power of focus and what a gift it is when you can achieve it.
And that's it. And sometimes it's like, I'm not doing it right. I've been here and I'm not doing it right, or I'm hating this, or I wish I was somewhere else. Notice a desire, come back to a thought. That's it. Coming back. And over time, it start to notice that you can kind of extend it. But there's like this idea of like Buddhist deep meditation where it's like you have these other experiential like levels. I think with Pema Chodron, I think she said she was doing it. She's like, I'm a Buddhist teacher who writes books. I've been doing this for 40 years. And I haven't experienced this until like when she was like 65 or something. It's not, and kind of the counterintuitive thing of Buddhism is you're not actually trying to go anywhere. That's the mistake in a way, is you're trying to accomplish something. You're not trying to accomplish anything. Just sit and bring back and notice what happens and be kind to what happens. And for me, I had one time in my entire life where I'd say I kind of had this like almost like a matrix, like everything like just came in like a singularity, and it was like a out of body, like I wasn't there, but I was there, and I wasn't thinking, but I was there. And then immediately as it happened, I started thinking about what I was experiencing, and then all went away,
Ruined it. Yeah.
But so for me, like if that happens, doesn't cool, whatever. But the simple practice of sitting with your anchor, returning to your anchor time and again, and trying to do so in a kind way, that's the superpower. It doesn't matter what we experience or what our mind thinks about or where it goes. It's the fact of noticing and coming back to the anchor, noticing and coming back. And that's it. That's it.
Now, I'm an American, so I want to know, what do I need to buy? Do I need a mat? I need a special mat, probably.
Well,
some kind of a pillow. I'm imagining like a pillow thing that I need to like sit cross-legged on or something.
Yeah. I mean, that's the beauty is. I think I read somewhere of a Buddhist who said he's a Zen teacher in Japan, and he says when when Americans come to his monastery to practice meditation, he gives them a brick. Even our meditation, it's so funny how this works. Like my first retreat, we go and there's all this like, they have like pillows and stuff, or if you have, because it is legit. You start to have back, and you even talked about that. When do you pay attention to your back, and when do you stop? Like that's the thing, because the point isn't to kill yourself. It's the, but it's also not to avoid discomfort. So there's actually part of the practice is, am my back sore because, if I move, is that to try to avoid discomfort, or can I sit with it? But then the opposite is true. Am I just trying to knuckle down and show how badass of a meditator I am when I'm actually breaking my back? Then change your position, get a chair, that, which I really resonate with, is like noticing what is your tendency here to go too hard or too soft, and working with that. So like when I go on a meditation retreat, there's like, they have pillows, they have things, they have chairs, and everyone does whatever. But we started our meditation retreat, and there's all these other like props, they call them. And someone grabs some pillows, someone grabs some more pillows, and then everyone starts noticing that the props are going down. And so everyone starts making a run at the props. And pretty soon, like an hour into our meditation, we've got like pillows. I mean, it looks like we're like you could throw us off a roof and we bounce. We have so much. And so they think, hey, this happens every meditation retreat. Think, what do you need to be able to sit for an extended period of time without moving? If that's a chair, if that's a pillow, and just notice what you need and what you don't need. So like that's part of the practice, was like, you're just kind of, in ways, like self-honesty. Like, is this actually going to help me be still if I have a couple of pillows? Or is this just kind of a way for me to zone out and take a little bit of a nap? Or am I just trying to be a super badass and I want to show everyone that I can sit on a brick and for 2 hours and hope the pretty girl, notices, without judgment. And to me, coming back from a Christian, that's the piece that's really intriguing, is notice all these, what I would call maybe bad desires or pride or things I want to judge, and just be like, ego, pride, I'm telling myself I'm a bad meditator, back to the anchor, back to right. And just the intention of doing that without the judgment, even when there is judgment, and coming back to the anchor, like, it's all okay. That last retreat, I would just say that, well, I guess one thing you made me think of, Nick, is the last retreat I went to, I was just really struggling. And I was really afraid to go to this retreat for some reason. It was my first 7-day residential retreat. And for some reason I was like, I don't know that I can make it. And I was feeling really, really like off. And anyway, the guy, one of the teachers said, I hit a wall when I go on retreat, like the third day. A lot of people, it's their first day. For me, it's the third day. And I just come in the retreat hall and at 3:00 and just sit. Sure enough, I didn't sleep for 3 days. I have a lot of anxiety, a fear. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And one day, the third day, it's like 3:00 in the morning. I'm like, frick. It's like that guy said that. So I go to the meditation hall and just like sat there. And I just like had this, like, I was like, I don't know if it was like a panic attack. I just like was overwhelmed of like, I can't sleep. I can't relax. I can't do anything. And there's something that I remember, I feel like, where it's like, fine, I guess I'm not going to sleep. I'm going to do this all the wrong way. And that's just what my experience is right now. And like, for like 5 hours I sat, and then it just all kind of been like, yeah, that's okay. It's okay to do it all wrong. Like that's what it is okay. That's the point. Whatever it is what it is, and that's okay. And that was like, I remember like internalized that at some point. It's like, oh yeah, that's cool, man. Sure. So for me, that's an ongoing lesson, is like, it's okay. There doesn't need to be some transcendental experience. Sometimes most of the time my mind's all over the place. And that's part of the reason I think we struggle with sitting, is when we get quiet, we notice how active the mind is and we want to like fix it. And it's like, that's kind of what the mind does. It's trying to protect us, trying to, it's just all over the place. And so you train it, sit with it, come back to the anchor. A billion times, that's the practice. And people say, like, that's all it is? Like, yeah, that's all it is. But crazy cool stuff happens too. It's like, oh, I thought I wanted this, and sitting with it, I'm like, it's actually this other thing that I was really more concerned about. Or, yeah, at least everyone has different kind of experiences, but we have so much in common in life typically, that having a little bit of time just to be quiet or try to be quiet, at least for me, I find it like, oh, that just brings up a totally different connection with my experience that I don't have access to in the day-to-day world of meetings and my calendar and paying bills and, just life. So I think it's more relevant. And I've read this too now in the West than ever before, because we have so much in common, really. And it's like, oh, and so one thing is like, it can be 30 seconds. It can be 10 seconds. It's like, it can have the intention, like, I just can't meditate. It freaks the hell out of me. But it's like, sometimes it's like, I look at my little pillow and just kind of do a bow. It's like, honor this. I'm not doing it today, but I want to just recognize that I honor the intention to do it. And
now when you do the bow, it has to be done in the correct way, or God won't hear you, right? Or you won't open your mind correctly.
Yeah, we haven't talked about Buddhist hell yet. And there's only 3 mistakes. You can only this is kind of a next level, but you can only have your mind wander 3 times before you're kicked out. So just, yeah.
Your friends and family stop talking to you.
Your friends and family, yeah, and you're actually old pastor gets an automatic text message of your location and your incognito search engine on your Google Chrome.
Something interesting to me about I've gotten more interested in a philosopher, Simone Weil, recently, who is I've heard described as a philosopher of attention. And she was a French Christian.
What time?
Which I think is interesting. In the 1900s, I think, right?
Yeah, she was around during the war, so like 19.
Right.
She died 1943, so right before the war ended, I think.
Okay.
1948.
Yeah, you might really resonate with her stuff, but what made me think of it is just that I think a lot of the things you're saying have a lot of crossover. Like we were saying before, like truth is truth, or like if something is helpful, and clearly what we pay attention to matters. Our ability to pay attention to things matters. Yeah. And it's pretty amazing what you can accomplish when you kind of align your focus, your attention, and you're actually able to stay attentive to things. And I do think that whatever combination of things is going on today that's causing us to lack attention and focus, I think it's having profound impacts on our society.
Yeah. There's some research I've heard about that too. Nick, I guess one of the teachers, I think it was Kornfield, I remember, said that the biggest difference he noticed between the West, specifically America, because Kornfield probably has taught more meditation students than anybody in the world at this point, definitely in America. The biggest difference was the lack of compassion and self-compassion in America, just how hard we are on ourselves. And to me, that their attention there too, because both of those things feel like really hard combination, at least in my own experience, like hard to like be present but also like really hard on myself for not being able to do those things either. You can see it kind of spirals and piles on and can come out in weird conflicts and stuff, So it's real. I guess I just want to, what you said, like it's a real thing, and this is different. It's also different than in the past in some level too, as far as our attention and a sense of like, hey, it's okay to screw up, or it's okay to be human. There's a a harshness that isn't true in every part of the world. That was surprising to me. I thought this is how it is wherever it is in the world. Everyone's just kind of a jerk to themselves. But what you said earlier about, I feel like I should mention this, is about resources, because like Christian, not every Christian's the same Christian. Not every Buddhist is the same Buddhist, and there's a lot of Buddhists out there, and there are people who say they're Buddhists, and it's like, ooh, that's some sketchy stuff going on.
There are a lot of Buddhist cults too.
Yeah, there are Buddhist cults. I in Colorado one time, I was a friend who was a Buddhist years ago. We went like, oh, there's this cool kind of group going on, and we went, and it was like I didn't catch it at first. I was like, this is interesting. It's kind of a different vibe. But it's like, my friend is like, she's like, something isn't right here. And I was like, I can't put my finger on it. So we left, and then like Googling and searching the group. And it's like, actually, this is a really sketchy group that like presents himself as like Buddhist and helpful, but they're actually like a cult or trying to, take advantage of people. Or so like, if you like someone who's interested, looks up Jack Kornfield, Thich Nhat Hanh, Tar Brock, Jeffrey Goldstein, like those are totally mainstream people that are respected. And Thich Nhat Hanh died, I think, last year, and he wasn't really a scientist, but beloved by, just beautiful wisdom. All those others are also like scientists, John Kabat-Zinn, who are completely mainstream and healthy stuff, Pema Chodron. So like, to me, like you Google those, and those are a good place to start. And they have other each of them has different resources and recommendations. But they all have like online free content too. That's just really cool and healthy. But I think that's a really good point about the resources, because you just can't, it's just like you want to say, Google Christians and feel, you're going to get to the right version. Buddhism, you could get some crazy too if you're not paying attention. So people are co-opting that word as many as others are for their own purposes. So I think
you're in the age of the grift.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point that you just I need to be like, what are some solid resources, and all those people will have like 20 or more of other ones that you can look into if you're interested. I love you're having these conversations. I wish this was around when I was having some questions myself. I just remember thinking like, is anybody else having this? Like I felt a sense of like loneliness, or I felt alone going through the process. Yeah. And I would have loved to have just a resource I could listen to and be like, oh yeah, other people have had their own stuff and come out the other side. And
I think that's why we started it. Because they say make the content that you want to see, right? Like I didn't really see it. Yeah, it was partially selfish. Just I wanted to have these conversations with interesting people, and I felt like other people probably would benefit from it. Yeah,
even back when we were at college, I always valued our conversations, because it's just like, if someone else that's going through what I felt was just really helpful. Even being in different religions, different places. The act of questioning, what I found myself, I'm like with you, Nick, and I just found that really needed.